Did you know the first black Secret Service agent is also the first black Secret Service agent that went to jail for bribery for 6 years?
Under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Buried deeper, we're breaking the locks. Footage got clipped, they erased all the shots. They connected dots. Under the docks, under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Under the docks.
Welcome back. Under the Docks, Paranoid American and Sean Chris with your holiday season Thanksgiving fiesta.
This is the holiday where we all get together and hopefully talk to each other over a big, plate of food and all about JFK and whether or not Lee Harvey Oswald was in the CIA and whether or not JFK's body was swapped out with JD Tibbetts. And hopefully, I hope that that's the conversation that happens every single year because it's better than talking about politics. Does that count as politics?
It's in the realm.
I would say it's apolitical at this point. Like, who killed JFK? I don't think that there's a political angle to it. But then again, I'm like the most biased person in the world when it comes to all these. And speaking of, today we're talking about JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass. This is from 2021. And what makes this one unique is that it's a documentary created by Oliver Stone. And what I imagine is that he saw all these different JFK documentaries popping up and then using clips of his movie. And I'm sure a couple points he's watching, he's like, that's not what I meant. Like, that's not at all what I think. So he kind of puts his own efforts together. He shows his own clips from his own movies and then has him talking to the actual people in some cases that we're actually talking about in the movie. So this one is unique. I had not seen this one before we recorded for this episode. Have you ever even heard of this one?
No, this is my first time seeing it. It must have slipped in the crack. It was probably one of those things, 2021, after the pandemic stuff, like everybody's there's so many different documentaries and podcasts and YouTube's exploding. It definitely went under the radar for me. And wow, I'm like, I missed this?
Well, last week's was Everything is a Rich Man's Trick from JFK to 9/11. And a couple times in through the course of that 3.5-hour documentary, the director throws a little bit of shade at Oliver Stone. He kind of makes I'll paraphrase him off comments where it's just like, Oliver Stone, was part of this cover up because of X, Y, Z or whatever, because that guy had his own grand unification theory going. Oliver Stone here, he does kind of put forward exactly what he thinks. But man, before we even get into all the notes, I got to say that this one is masterfully done in that it the pacing and the way that it's structured and the editing, like everything about it. I mean, we're talking about Oliver freaking Stone, so he's the master of propaganda at this point. So I wouldn't expect anything less.
This was a masterpiece for sure.
All right, it wasn't easy, but I was able to nail down just 5 main claims from this documentary. There's a whole lot more. But again, these ones were kind of stated really clearly by just the production, the narration, the story, and it does a great job of weaving through all these. So the first main one is that the FBI invented the entire bullet chain of events of this magic bullet. That what happened is that someone came up with an idea first, this magic bullet theory, and then all the other facts and evidence kind of got shaped or ignored or suppressed or manipulated in order to support that one theory. And again, my bias speaking out, this is kind of just what the FBI does. It's kind of like they figure out who the criminal is first, and then they reverse engineer the crime in a certain way. Now, to answer a couple questions that I had as I'm watching this, and I'm just going to assume that anyone listening, and then even when I was going through this, like forget everything that you've heard, everything you know, even including Rich Man's Trick. In this one, though, it comes up with a lot of the same things Rich Man's Trick talked about, and that's that the story had to be that the bullet came from behind JFK because that's where Lee Harvey Oswald was at. He was, to the rear of JFK because the motorcade had kind of already turned and crossed. So if there were any bullets whatsoever that looked like they had come from the front, like through the neck or through the chest or any of that, or even in the head, that those had to be eliminated systematically. And one of the big things of this guy named Arlen Specter, he's the one that creates this magic bullet theory. The magic bullet itself is actually called CE399. That's the evidence number for this magic bullet. This is the kind of detail that this particular documentary gets into, which I really appreciated, because a lot of the other ones, they pepper you with a lot of info, but this one kind of puts everything under a microscope, and it slowly goes through so that you fully understand what they're talking about.
Completely. Like they even go as far as talking about would the bullets found and where they were found. Like the one supposedly like was found on the floor, and some guy just was like, "Hey, I think this fell out of his body. I'm not sure where it goes." And they're like, "Yeah, that's not how bullets work." And even the initials were supposed to put on a report of like, "Hey, I verify and saw this bullet." It really goes through the whole path of where you're actually able to grasp what happened, not just like, "Hey, FBI's corrupt." We're like, "Oh yeah, gambling. Yeah, we know this."
Yeah, this wasn't like a 15th century investigation. This is in the 1960s, and the whole concept, the chain of custody, is fairly established at this point. They got a little log record book that you're supposed to sign in exactly where you got the bullet and who you're passing it off to. And let's not forget, through the course of this, talking about the bullet that ended up killing the president of the United States, the active president of the United States. So you would expect them to treat this thing like it were like a nuclear warhead, or the Holy Grail, or the Ark of the Covenant, or something important, especially on the day of the murder itself, right? So one of the things that they break down about this chain of custody is that first it goes to the hospital personnel. And like you said, it was literally a janitor that's walking by, and he looks down and he sees like a bullet on the floor, and he turns this into Secret Service. And then that Secret Service member hands it off to the Secret Service chief. And then that's supposed to go to an FBI agent who then delivers it directly to the FBI lab. So that's the official chain of evidence in the Warren Commission report and all in official records. But when they go back and they ask these people that have their names on this sheet, and they're like, "No, I never saw that. I never touched his bullet." And even beyond that, like you said too, that part of this chain of custody is every person that came in contact with this bullet was supposed to etch their initials into the bullet itself, into the tip of the bullet. That leads into a whole other angle where it's like, okay, how is this bullet in pristine condition to where people could even etch their initials on it in the first place? Why isn't it just a jagged clump of sort of metal? And one of the guys that's involved in this investigation, I think he said he went through like 600 rounds of this exact same bullet manufacturer, the exact same gun, everything. And out of those 600+ rounds that they shot, not a single one was left intact. It looked as pristine as this magic bullet. And where did the magic bullet come from? Well, again, reverse engineering this magic bullet theory, one of them was that as they were doing chest compressions on the president, that it pushed the bullet out, almost like it had worked itself up into like a little tunnel, and then just the air compression pushed the bullet back out like you were popping a pimple or something. And the guy describing this is like, yeah, this is incredulous. This is not how bullets work. It's not how forensics work. This is not how the chain of custody is supposed to work. So this documentary in particular absolutely puts kind of, and to my mind, it puts a nail in a coffin as to there's no way that this magic bullet theory has any stock to it.
And it also handcuffs the Warren Commission, which was already, we'll go into like their corruption later, but because of the 3-shot theory that the FBI is coming up with, like, hey, this is what happened, that's all they investigated. They wouldn't go any further because they're like in cooperation with the FBI of like, oh, I guess it was only 3 shots. That's as far as we'll get this investigation to go.
I have to say this too. This had nothing to do with this particular documentary, but there was a special edition episode of that show Mythbusters. And in the episode, they try and reenact the magic bullet theory, and they claim that they do it. They have ballistic dummies all set up. They have a sniper from the same position, the same angle, and everything. Of course, this is stationary. It's not in a moving car or anything. And they do. Apparently, they claim that they're showing this trajectory of a bullet that takes the whole path. However, it doesn't explain the front entry wound in the neck. It doesn't explain the head. It doesn't explain the chain of custody issues, any of this. So again, the magic bullet theory to me probably didn't make sense to even people at the time, but even less sense now. The next big claim is that the rifle itself wasn't even the same. That there's pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald. They're fairly famous now, where he's holding up this rifle. And the official story was that he did a mail order in a catalog. And by the way, it was like $12.95 or something. It was like a dope price, man. As I'm watching this, like, oh, the damn IRS, this damn inflation. But he gets this mail order rifle. And then when they actually present the rifle in court and in all the documentation, the people that were experts enough to know the difference were like, wait a minute, that's not the same rifle. It's not the same rifle with Lee Harvey Oswald in the photo, which is the one that matched the catalog version. But the one that's actually put through trial doesn't match either. It doesn't match the photos. It doesn't match the catalog. It has a connection to where you put the sling. It's a completely different orientation, a different side of the rifle, everything. And one of the photos of Lee Harvey Oswald holding that was apparently inverted, because they make a point that on these, there's 3 photos. On 2 of them, his ring is on like his left or his right hand. And then on the one that's supposed to be like the infamous one, that one had been reversed for who knows what reason, but just that the photo itself had been doctored is what this particular documentary is claiming.
And that the fingerprints that didn't match up as well. Obviously, where they were talking about the palm print and where it would have to be. So there was, from the get-go of even the rifle getting confiscated, was like botched, to say the least.
And again, to give credit to this documentary for how specific it is, it even mentions that the photos of Lee Harvey Oswald were titled 133A and 133B, and this is where the ring was on his right hand, and then evidence 133C is where the ring is on the other hand. So if you want to go in and look into any of these claims made in this video, they tell you exactly what document, exactly what part of the evidence that they're citing. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of go down these rabbit holes on your own, which I didn't realize how much I appreciated that until I saw it just kind of being served up to me on a silver platter time and time again in this documentary.
And 33.
Via 133. What's that all about, Masons? That the third claim is that there were other witnesses at the book depository, but they were discredited and they were ignored because, again, it didn't fit into this preconceived crime and perpetrator and sequence events and magic bullet and all this. And one of those witnesses out of the many was another woman that worked at the book depository, and that she basically could have exonerated Lee Harvey Oswald in a way, or at least shown that there were additional shooters in addition to maybe whatever happened from that particular area. But that the Warren Commission, they told the girl that had the weaker story, and especially without having corroborating evidence, without having another witness that was backing her up, her story kind of fell apart a little bit, and they were able to pick it apart. And she even at one point was like, hey, this other girl that was with me saw all the same stuff. She reported it to her own people so that they can also corroborate that they heard the same story from 2 different people too. And the Warren Commission was just like, nah, you're good. Like, we don't need her. You're good. Like, you're doing great. And they knew that they had the weak link and not the strong link, and that they intentionally moved forward with that just so that there could be more question about whether or not there were multiple shooters.
Yeah, just to hush it up. And they even actually destroyed some like the interview tapes from the FBI did, I would say, not the Warren Commission. And they got rid of all that stuff when that would like have point blank been like, oh, I saw Oswald. And she didn't, you know what I'm saying? Where she was at her vantage point, right? Didn't he run down? And then that's where they were like, yeah, she would have definitely been in his eyesight. So it would have threw off everything to through the whole case and put it out the window.
The fourth claim, maybe my favorite, this one is the craziest one, was that the entire autopsy was a complete fraud from start to end. And there's a whole bunch of different things that they cite that back up this particular claim. So, for example, like we've mentioned now and in the previous one, that clearly JFK was shot in the neck. You even see him like raise his arms up to the front of his neck. Like if you got shot in the back of the neck, maybe you'd like put your hand. But anyways, that we're talking conjecture. This is just my own observation. But yeah, first he gets shot in the neck. Then again, he gets shot in the front left temple. Both shots coming from the front. Then all of those two shots right there is completely counter to what makes it into the Warren report. Again, the Warren report says that it had to be from Lee Harvey Oswald, so therefore it had to be from the back because he was behind the motorcade at this point. That there was one physician that originally was like, no, he definitely got shot from the front. And they were like, are you sure he got shot from the front? And he's like, yeah, I've been doing this my whole life. Exactly. And then they kind of, I'm gonna have some creative liberty here. They take him into like a dark room for a few days, and then he comes back out and he's like, he did not get shot from the front. JFK definitely got shot from the back. I recant everything I said before. It was very, and then after the Warren Commission was over, every single person that went and interviewed him afterwards and talked to him, he was like, no, of course he got shot from the front. There's no way that he got shot from the back. So clearly there was at least like the one guy that they found. And again, it was just like the eyewitness where they picked the one eyewitness that they knew that they could either manipulate or have the weakest story. They do the same thing with everyone down the chain. They don't ask all the physicians. They find the one guy that they can twist his arm behind his back. And then they're like, are you sure? And then once that guy understands what they're asking, they just run with that.
See, my creative liberty was more like, did he get diddied, right? Like they go, hey, here's a picture, man. Got a couple videos of you, bud. Like, sure you saw what you saw? And he's like, no.
You and LeBron James? Wow, that's so cool, man. Another one too was that the surgeon came out and he also said that it had to be from the front. His name was Charles Crenshaw, and he actually writes a book called, get this, Conspiracy of Silence.
I know that.
And I didn't even put two and two together when we watched the other conspiracy science documentary, which has nothing to do with JFK, or at least not directly. And then that the autopsy photos themselves did not match what the surgeons and the pathologists wrote down and remembered seeing later. Every one of the surgeons and pathologists that sees the autopsy photos, they were all like, that is not what I saw. And it was different enough because they do go into detail. For example, on the autopsy photos, this documentary claims that hair was drawn into the photos. Like they old school hand photoshopped it. So someone kind of painted over the missing bottom part of the skull, which was the exit wound from getting shot in the front. They just completely Photoshop that, draw hair on top of it. So now when they're showing it to the jury and anyone else, it doesn't look like the back of his head exploded. But everyone else that saw the actual JFK autopsy all said that he was missing the back of his head.
Every single one. And they even bring up the point that the beginning of the autopsy, like the body was transported from Dallas, like it should have happened right then and there, not like, oh, hey, let's go transport it later on. We'll check it out. We're not sure. It should have been immediately after the pronunciation of death to like start performing maybe an autopsy, at least in Dallas.
And this gets even crazier. So this part, and again, to the documentary's credit, I don't know if it's Oliver Stone responsible for making it so coherent, but this is so many random details and names and events and the order in which things are happening. It's incredibly chaotic, which is how this conspiracy was able to sort of hide behind all this chaos. But they do such a great point of systematically pointing out all these notes. So, for example, they said that no bullets at all were ever found during the autopsy. There was nothing inside JFK. Allegedly, they never found any of these bullets. That the bullet was found, like we mentioned, on like under a stretcher by a janitor as he's walking down the hall, and then he passes up this chain. Well, that stretcher story about how the janitor came across it and he found it and all that happened and got out before the single bullet theory was established. So now the single bullet theory also had to take into account that like this one bullet was found, and what rifle it came from and what caliber, like all of that stuff, that now all of a sudden the Warren Commission is like, crap, they've got like story A, B, and C, and none of them really line up. And there's people that are saying they heard shots from different angles. So I guess just the lack of internet and the fact that there was so much media complacency allowed just the most obvious of lies to get covered up, including, again, official surgeons and physicians and eyewitnesses all saying the exact opposite of what's happening in the Warren Commission. But the media at the exact same time is like, the Warren Commission reports out, there's no refutation. Like, this is 100%, like waterproof. No one else has claimed anything to the contrary. So I guess we have found the sole killer. And without the media doing that, there were so many seams that were already unraveling. Oh, the last note is that Lee Harvey Oswald was in the CIA, and they have a whole bunch of examples of, why they make this claim. One is that the New Orleans CIA headquarters, when Lee Harvey Oswald was living in New Orleans, was directly across from the street from this place called Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And this is where Lee Harvey Oswald was passing. They got photos of him and video passing out flyers to people right out front of this area. Well, that comes up in a few different Lee Harvey Oswald's documentaries and stories you'll come across. Oh, yeah, he was a Cuban sympathizer, and that's why he hated JFK. It had something to do with the Bay of Pigs and with communism or something. But I've never heard before this one, or at least it didn't register, that this happened to just be across the street from the CIA headquarters.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. It's another interesting coincidence in a list of many, that his role was essentially an agent provocateur, in that he was working for the CIA to infiltrate this counter-American group and then try and sort of like create issues from the inside so that the government would have a reason to infiltrate them and to break them apart because they got a man inside, which is pretty typical for any intelligence agency.
That's coup 101, right? Like, you're on both sides, and he just so happened to be for the people that were trying to liberate Cubans, and then the other side that was opposed to the liberation and like, hey, we're pro Castro. He was on both groups, and he was being investigated prior to all of this by OTEP, right? Otto Otepka. Otepka, I think that's how you pronounce it. He was already on the radar of people like, hey, who is this guy? He went to Russia supposedly and defected from, denounced his citizenship, quote unquote, comes back, and they're like, yeah, he was debriefed. Like, they're like, that's CIA 101, man. You just come back, hey, so what's going on? We're decompressing you. Give us the information you got. And he was not the only one. They kind of tail it later on, pulling the threads of like, oh, this is not just one-off guy, like just randomly went to Russia, maybe CIA. They had plenty other people involved in this.
And the full story that they're trying to paint here was that Lee Harvey Oswald was being groomed as a perfect anti-American patsy for whatever they needed that particular person to exist for. It was a typical lone wolf, Timothy McVeigh kind of territory, right? So Lee Harvey Oswald's one of those characters. Oh, he was a loner and he hated the government and he went to Russia and he's got a military background and he was a sniper. So he kind of checks these boxes that make it convenient. And there was another Lee Harvey Oswald. This came up, I think, in the previous documentary. We get way more detail in this one. It was this guy in Chicago, because JFK was also going to have a motorcade in Chicago, and the Chicago one was going to happen before the Dallas one, but it ended up not happening because I think that they got spooked. Secret Service got spooked, or JFK got spooked. And this guy's name was Thomas Arthur Valley. These are all the things that he shares in common with Lee Harvey Oswald. 1, he was an ex-Marine. 2, he was posted in a base in Japan that was known for CIA presence because they had reconnaissance planes. 3, he was a disgruntled anti-Kennedy loner that was armed. 4, that he was trained by Cuban exiles, which was also by the CIA. And then 5, that he got a job in a tall building that was adjacent to the motorcade. This dude was literally just Lee Harvey Oswald 1.0, the version that didn't go through. So Lee Harvey Oswald, I wonder how many Lee Harvey Oswalds the CIA had in 1960 spread all throughout the country. So JFK's like, oh yeah, we're going to Indianapolis. They're like, and someone's like, I know a guy. Like they already got someone in the works.
Yeah, and then Vail, and then they had Lopez in Tampa, another one that didn't really fall through. And to go back to Vail, the crazy part that like kind of connects a lot of this too. This is what the film does very well that I think they lacked in like everything's a rich man's trick. Maybe it's because my bias of how I like films to be broken down. Every claim is like where I'm like, oh, that's realistically a connection. It's not just loosely connected because he connects it with George Johannes, the psychological warfare expert and part of the cabinet, and then these people that are like grooming these guys. And then in the Chicago scenario where you had Abraham Bolden, the Secret Serviceman that was trying to report this all before the Dallas situation, and that the situation was on the books and they kind of covered it up, and it was not given to the Secret Service to be like, hey, you might want to watch out for guys in tall buildings, you know, like disgruntled Marines that like really don't like JFK. Because the one thing they do great in this film is they ask, like they have a scene from the movie and he's like, ask the why. Why did this happen? Not just like, well, maybe this guy did this and maybe this guy. So he actually speculates that not only the CIA version of like, I'm going to destroy the CIA into a billion pieces, and the military industrial complex by him not wanting to put boots on the ground in Vietnam is what plotted this whole thing up where you have multiple patsies to go around the country.
All right, hidden treasures, overboard moments. What were the highlights for you?
The highlights were like, as I was mentioning in our last segment, just like the Abraham Bolden story, because I had never heard that one. That was new to me, where I'm like, oh man, like he reported all this information to get it back to the Secret Service so they could be like, it's the ultimate cover up, right? Like it's all of this whole documentary reminded me a lot of what happened during 9/11 because we experienced it. So 9/11 and JFK, they seem like such similar events where you have all these moving parts, because the other piece that was a hidden treasure to me was this connection with Lopez, with Vail, and with Oswald, where they were all trained by the CIA and the Cuban exiles. They all like were in the military, 2 in the Marines and then 1 in the Cuban exile forces. And they all had the same MK Ultra sheep dip. Like it's like this all told me about like a noble lie, a loose change, like, right? It's the same blueprint that we see time and time again. But the main hidden treasures for me was bringing the names to light. Like, you know what I mean? Brenson, Johannes, like these names I've never heard that were all connected to Oswald, and they show the pattern of how they connected.
And we saw pictures, we saw videos, we saw evidence, like all of the things they talk about, they show all of these things. So it's not like, you know, I heard a guy in a bar once say this. Everything was kind of backed up. So I got a short list. I'm just going to go through my punch list of the hidden treasure in this movie. Whoopi Goldberg and Donald Sutherland are doing the narration. It was the weirdest thing. It starts talking about this motorcade and like Whoopi Goldberg's talking. I had to pause it and make sure that, you know, I wasn't tripping a little bit. But no, it's narrated by Oliver Stone, Whoopi Goldberg, and Donald Sutherland. One of the coolest parts of this documentary was how specifically they were calling out and then showing evidence of cohesion between CBS, NBC, the New York Times, and how they were bolstering this Warren Commission report. And one of these examples, which blew my mind, that this guy named McCloy, who was on the Warren Commission, that he was consulting through his daughter, and his daughter was a secretary to Richard Salient, who was the president of CBS News. So a guy on the Warren Commission that's trying to stack the deck, he's got his daughter working at the head of CBS News and piping the information directly to the president, where it can come from the top down, from memos from the CEO, as opposed to any information going from like boots on the ground journalist and working its way up. So if this story is already being presented to you on a silver platter by your boss's boss's boss, right? Then that's one of those easy ways that this is why no one's asking questions. There's no one doing any extra research about this. That, again, they stress that the bullet was found before the magic bullet theory came out. So now no one ever asked us in the Warren Commission or in the media, because again, the media was all stacked on this. But if if it went through the back of his neck or something and came out and it was like in his shirt or it got jostled from his back, right? That makes sense. If you want to believe that makes sense, then fine. That makes sense that that's where the bullet was found by the janitor on the floor because it fell out of JFK's body. But the magic bullet theory says it went through JFK and then it went into what the hell was the guy's name?
The mayor, no, the governor, right?
Yeah, the governor. Hold on, let me fucking invite this. Oh, Connolly. But the stretcher story basically ignores that Connolly existed. So the official magic bullet theory was that the bullet goes through JFK, goes into Connolly through his wrist, bounces out, and then goes into his thigh. So if the magic bullet theory, which was the official theory, if that had any credibility, how did now the bullet get from Connolly's thigh into the room where JFK was getting out? So, like, how did it make its way on a JFK stretcher if it ended up in his thigh? I never thought of that. That's one of those weird observations that never gets put together, again, because the media kind of dropped the ball on this entire story. You mentioned Abraham Bolden. So I hadn't heard this guy's name either. He was the first Black Secret Service agent ever. He was directly assigned by Kennedy to be his Secret Service guy, and that he was giving this brief about the Chicago event, and that there was going to be these 4 snipers. And he witnessed that there was lax security. He saw these different steps that were being taken to keep that entire plot completely secret, as opposed to getting out and even making its way to Kennedy. So when the Dallas motorcade goes down, he gets blocked from talking to the Warren Commission publicly to explain, like, hey, this happened before in Chicago, and I can see that someone's trying to orchestrate this. Because again, the point of the Warren Commission was to make sure that this was a lone wolf, disgruntled loner story and not a conspiracy by any other group. It would just wrap itself up so nice and tight if it was just this one guy and then that guy gets arrested or that guy dies, which is exactly what happens. Another one is that Lumumba, who, long story short, this is the first actual African that runs the Congo after being under Belgian rule since forever. And it was only under Belgian rule for like over a century because the US helped back like Belgium's right in order to run the Congo. So anyways, Lumumba, he ends up being the first person that's running the actual Congo, and JFK intervenes because the CIA wants to take him out. And JFK was like, no, we don't need to keep intervening in Africa. Like, let them just run their own country. And they end up assassinating Lumumba. And that, I think, is pointed out as like the moment JFK was like, screw all these CIA guys. I can't trust them. They are doing things that I'm explicitly telling them not to do, as if they run the country and not me. And I think that's when he kind of started putting everything together. And he realized that John Foster and Alice Dulles were the ones running the country and not him.
And he kind of made them step down, right? Like before all this happened, like there's a lot of intent that they paint in this film of these CIA and FBI agents like had reason to push Kennedy out. And even the Umbomba, they like, you could tell it was like his assassination, the plane crash, and there's like a ace of spades card in his collar, that like a calling sign, like, and it kind of made me think just watching this film, because I know the CIA, we talk a lot of stuff about that, but it does have this hitman feel of it, and almost the CIA is a bunch of gangsters. So really, the one thing that everything is a rich man's tricks got right is the CIA and mafia are one and the same.
And the final hidden treasures for me is that they also go into Operation Northwood. I don't know how they have the time to go through all these different facets and show all this evidence, and it's not a 3.5 hour documentary like all the other ones. So again, like it's done really well. The editing's great, and it talks about how Operation Northwoods, the whole premise was to stage a terror attack, to do our own terror attack on a commercial airliner, and then blame the explosion of that airliner or that tragedy, which in this case was going to be a drone. It was going to be a commercial airliner fitted with parts so that it could be flown remotely with no one on it. So when it explodes, they could then be like, "Oh my God, they just blew up 100 people in the sky," and turn. I mean, they're basically describing 9/11. They don't mention that specifically, but that's kind of what they're painting the two things together. Is that Operation Northwoods and 9/11 were probably orchestrated by the same group of people that were orchestrating the JFK assassination. What was bad?
To me, I didn't have a lot of bad moments because I was captivated. I would say, like, if I had to say anything, not necessarily overboard, but what kind of slowed it up is like the first 40 minutes, telling the story because you've heard it so many times. To me, after that, for first 45 minutes, I'd say even 35, somewhere around that point, the action starts hitting in. But that's just me being like, hey, I want the action sooner.
My note was almost identical. My note was just the long ass 15-minute intro. Like, it's just a very, very long getting into it, and it goes through the whole everyone knows where they were when they heard about, it does all the things that you've heard a million times. So I was wondering, a good 20 minutes in, is this ever gonna show me some crazy conspiracy stuff? Is it gonna blow my it did. It absolutely picked up after that, but it maybe if you flip this on and it's like the middle of the night and you're just giving a bunch of different movies and shows a chance, and you give this one 15 minutes, I could see changing the channel even after that 15-minute mark comes up. You're like, whatever, I've seen this before. I would definitely say just power through that first 15 to 20 minutes, and then it just starts hitting left and right with really interesting facts. We could do some ripples and waves here. I mean, I would say that the ripples and waves are really just ancillary to the original JFK movie by Oliver Stone. That one probably had way more of an impact than this JFK 2. I didn't even know that this thing existed. I knew that Oliver Stone had a couple different political documentary series, but I didn't realize that he went into even more depth into his original JFK movie. And then he shows all this other stuff that couldn't make it into the movie, and things that have been developing for the last 20 years since he put it out.
And I think to me, the waves and ripples would be connecting like every JFK documentary ever and like answering questions, me personally, that I've had, and kind of presenting it in a way that I like, I guess how I like information to come out. I think it really connects in all the loose ends we see from so many different documentaries that kind of dabble here, dabble there. And you're like, oh, okay, that fills in these blanks that I've been wondering.
100%. I think that that's probably the best part of this documentary, is that you should almost watch this one right after you watch Rich Man's Trick, which is kind of why we're reviewing it right after, so you can get like the full info dump before the Oliver Stone documentary came out. And it kind of explains, it answers those questions that are left open-ended. Well, this one closes those sentences. Like, it actually answers, here's who, what, why, when, where, like all of that. All right, sink or swim. Where you at?
I'm a swim all the way, man. And watching this film, kind of, I know the last few episodes, weeks, you've been kind of breaking down like how you kind of see films and how we're kind of finding how we're being critiquing how our critique style of these films. And for me, I think this is like my baseline is Loose Change, right? And this is on that level to me. Obviously, a well produced, lot of information, documentation, actually putting the pieces together, not just, oh, hey, maybe this happened, like a lot of questions. It's very precise. It's Hollywood based, where you can have anybody can watch this film, whether you agree with it or not. It has the intro, which for me is a little long, but I'm sure some people would appreciate that. But when you really get into close to the second half, it's just nonstop. It's just boom, 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 boom. It's like if they did what Loose Change did and made another edition, as we talked before, and kind of even tightened it up even more, then it would be 10 times better, and it's still great. So this is like one of those two thumbs up, all the way swim. Michael Phelps doing the Olympic, getting the gold.
I agree with that. And actually, I think that that's such a huge compliment to Loose Change that they are. I would say these two were kind of on that same level. This one was made by freaking Oliver Stone and Whoopi Goldberg and Donald Sutherland doing the voiceover, right? Versus Loose Change, which was essentially independently produced. So just nothing but credit to Loose Change constantly. I think that's going to be the gold standard. This one's right next to it, man. This one's not even like silver medal. Like they're just sharing the gold a little bit in that same category, right? So, and I think, going into this one with a little chip on my shoulder of like, let's see what kind of lies Oliver Stone's got planned for us now, right? Because he has done a very propaganda like take on some of the other political stuff that he's gone through, or at least accused of being incredibly politically biased. So I was kind of looking extra hard for like, let's see what kind of lies, he's gonna roll up and try and make good in this one. Man, I couldn't find them, man. Again, they're showing you, here's the chain of custody, here's the autopsy photos, here's interviews with actual people. Now, if you want to go through and discredit every one of the people that's interviewed and they're like, we're seeing the actual footage and some of the witness statements, that's a whole different animal than just trying to show Oliver Stone's bias, because these interviews happened before Oliver Stone had any kind of inkling about what any was going to happen, right? So I feel that this one gets a full swim. It's well worth your time, and I do think you could probably show it to some normies out there. I think that it would put them. Although, man, I've had to watch so many different JFK assassination documentaries and books and blog articles and all of that, so that when I watched this, it finally was filling in these gaps. But if this is the first thing that you're watching and you're not familiar with all the other nuanced stuff, I could imagine just a lot of it going over your head as you're watching this. You're like, oh yeah, who cares if the bullet was, declared found before, after the, defense said this. So that's the whole reason why I think that this one's well worth watching through like a couple different phases of your JFK journey. On the horizon, we're going to finish up JFK Thanksgiving month. We're very thankful for the JFK assassination. And we're going to wrap it up with JFK 2, The Bush Connection, which was created before this JFK Revisited by Oliver Stone came out. So JFK 2 was originally proposed as like what this movie is, right? It was like, oh, you've seen the JFK movie, but you probably have questions. Well, I'm going to answer all that for you. So this JFK 2, The Bush Connection, is going to go into that, and we're going to see it is nothing like Revisited.
Nothing at all.
I mean, that's another episode, Under the Docks. Make sure you go on to your podcasts and search for Under the Docks. Subscribe to Kill the Mockingbirds with Sean Chris. Subscribe to the Paranoid American podcast. We got plenty more coming at you. So peace.
Peace.
Under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Buried deep, but we're breaking the locks. Footage got clipped, they erased all the shots. They connected dots. Under the docks, under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Under the docks.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
NASAcomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm NASAcomic.com, go visit NASAcomic.com. Go visit NASAcomic.com. Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com. Oh, NASAcomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm NASAcomic.com. Go Go visit NASAcomic.com. Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.